In this video, you're going to learn about how to maintain your posture throughout the entire backswing and the follow through. So if you are someone that may be lowering yourself in the backswing and then raising it up in the follow through, or vice versa, then I'm going to explain the reasons as to why that may be happening and some feels or drills that you need to apply in order to fix the issue. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And if you are visiting my channel for the first time, please subscribe to see more golf-related content in the future. Now let's get into it. Okay, so when someone wants to kind of maintain their posture throughout the backswing and the follow through, what they mean is that since you're at a bent forward position at a setup, we want to learn how to maneuver ourselves so that our posture remains the same. So we're trying to turn around that spine angle, we're trying to go around, okay, and we're trying to go through while still being on that same angle that was similar to what we were at address. Now, if we were trying to change that, or if we were changing the posture throughout the swing, the downside is that you'll change your distance away from the ground. It'll be more difficult for you to hit the same spot on the ground all the time, and it will affect contact and all sorts of things. So the goal would be to kind of take it back to the top of the backswing at the same posture, and then on the way through, kind of at a similar posture as well. That'll give you the best control or best chance at being able to hit the same spot on the ground and make consistent contact. The most common mistake that I see with most players is that they lower themselves throughout the backswing, kind of like this. So if you see where I was at address, okay, when I go back, you can see my posture getting lower as I make a full turn. The first thing to understand is that the reason why that may be happening is one of two reasons or both, okay? So the first reason has to do with how you're setting up to the ball. I see that players that tend to lower themselves, they tend to set up with most of their weight in their heels, and their posture tends to be a lot more upright. So they tend to set up more like this. So now the issue with setting up with your weight very much in your heels and an upright posture is if you try to apply any sort of tilt, you'll tend to lean forward and get lower like this. Okay, your weight will want to move back towards the center or more towards the toes, and your posture will tend to want to be a bit more bent over. So relative to where you were starting, you're going to lower yourself kind of like this. The second reason has to do with the amount of knee flex change. Remember, the purpose of changing knee flex is to allow your hips to turn. But if you change your knee flex quite a lot, what tends to happen is that that'll cause your hips to excessively tilt to the lead side, okay? So if my hips will tilt to the lead side, that's going to allow my upper body to tilt down as well. And that's going to cause me to drop my head down, or my upper body to drop down as I make a backswing. Either one of these two reasons most commonly, or a combination of both. If you are lowering yourself, the first adjustment is that you must, instead of sitting up in your heels, upright posture, you've got to move your weight or tuck your hip more forward, okay, to get your weight more in the center of your foot, less bend in the knees, and you want to feel like your chest is a little bit more over top of it. So with your weight in that position, you're going to discourage yourself from moving even further forward or more downwards because it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to move your weight more into your toes, okay? And when you also set up this way, you're also allowing yourself or giving yourself some space to actually move further back away from it, which is typically what people need to feel if they were setting up that way and they're trying to make a change to their posture and things like that. So remember, weight more in the center, closer to the balls of the feet, less bend in the knees, a bit more bent over from the waist to feel like your chest is a bit more over top. So that's the first adjustment. Now, the second adjustment is to control the amount of knee flex change. So we still want the knee flex change in there, but we don't need to change it so much that we see a gap in our knees, or we don't need to lock out our trail leg. There should still be some amount of bend in there. If you can control the amount of knee flex change that you have, that'll prevent your hips from over tilting and prevent your body or discourage your upper body from dipping down lower. So both of these things will help you discourage yourself from lowering. But again, if you are used to lowering yourself, in order to stay the same height or to kind of feel like you're turning more around your posture, you'll probably have to feel the opposite motion. It'll feel like you're almost moving further away from the ball than you're used to. So just remember, if your tendency is to always lower yourself, that's what you feel is kind of normal. So if you're trying to feel taller or prevent your body from moving down, chances are it has to feel like you're actually raising further away from it, kind of like this way, while applying those same things that I just mentioned. You can kind of see when I strike the golf ball, if I just hit this shot and maybe show you guys in slow motion, you can kind of see when I take it back, my knee flex changes, but I'm not really changing it like a crazy amount. And you'll also notice that if I hit one more here, okay, you'll see that with my weight kind of in the center, it doesn't really have to move much. Okay, so I'm still bent to the side a little bit. Okay, there's no real need for me to kind of try to lower myself. I'm still feeling kind of tall when I go through it. I would say once we adjust just these 2 points, you will already see a significant difference. The second mistake is obviously the opposite issue, right? Someone that, as they make their backswing, they're kind of getting taller or raising away from the golf ball or the ground more. More or less, the issues will be kind of the opposite, all right? So if you kind of get taller away from it, the first thing I notice is that both knees tend to be straightened out. That's the very common thing that I see with these kind of players, is they're just extending both of their knees as they take it back, which is not going to allow the body to get tilted enough to the lead side. So the second thing is that they all tend to kind of get their chest and everything too far off to the right of the ball. So if I show you from the front view, as I raise away from it, you can kind of see my weight and everything like that always tends to move off to the right. My chest is off to the right. Both knees are kind of extended out like this. From this side view, actually, if you find that you're extending both knees, you have to ensure that your lead knee kind of bends forward, okay? Both knees are still somewhat bent, okay? But you're bending your lead knee forward. You're straightening out your trail leg just a little bit, okay? You shouldn't see any big gap between the knees, but both knees should be feel a bit more grounded or a bit more bent than you're used to. And you want to feel as though your shoulder, your lead shoulder is kind of a little bit lower than normal. Again, it's just the opposite issues of what I just mentioned. If you were kind of lowering yourself, obviously you're demonstrating too much knee flex change. Okay, we want a little bit less. If you're raising away from it, you're not demonstrating enough knee flex change most likely, and then not enough tilt. The setup is the same. You should always set up kind of with the weight in the center. Okay, not too much in your heels, not too much in your toes, not kind of bent forward. Right in the center of the foot, slight bend in the knees, the same exact posture. This will give you the best chance to kind of keep your posture the same throughout the swing. Try to feel or try to pay attention to the amount of knee flex change that you have or don't have, and also how much tilt that you have in the lead shoulder. There's one drill that kind of will give you or force you to be in a certain position to give you a certain feel for this. If you are feeling like you're getting taller, remember it has to feel a little more the opposite. So it has to feel like you're kind of getting low, or you're staying lower than you're used to. But let me just get straight into the drill. Okay, so the drill is quite simple. So I just have this alignment stick that I'm trying to, like a very long alignment stick that's basically simulating like a wall. Okay, you can use a wall if you'd like. You get into your setup position and into your posture. You can first kind of focus on reviewing what I just mentioned before, with the weight kind of more in the middle, slight bend in the knees only, a bit more bent from the waist. So your head should be very close to the alignment stick or the wall. So now obviously you can use that wall or stick as a point of reference, but when you take it back, the goal is to not change the distance your head is away from the stick or the wall. So if you're getting lower, obviously you'll kind of bang into it. If you're raising away from it, you'll kind of move further away from that stick or that wall. The goal is when you do it slowly, you're trying to control the amount of knee flex change. You're trying to stay or keep your head close to that wall throughout, and also kind of into the fall through. You can also use the same drill if you're struggling with the fall through, which I will talk about in just a second. But it's a great one to kind of rehearse on your own. So if you are lowering yourself, you may feel much taller than you're used to when rehearsing this. if you're kind of raising away from it, you may feel like you're a lot more lower to it as you make a backswing. Okay, so it's a good way to kind of gauge where your head is and to give yourself the right feel or sensation of what you have to do. Okay, so now let's talk about the follow through. Okay, so starting with the most common issue that I see, and the most common issue is on the way through, I see players basically kind of raise their entire trail side kind of away from the ground or away from that golf ball, and they kind of look like this on the way through. To solve this issue, you first have to understand how things work from the ground up. And what I mean by the ground up is kind of where your weight should be displaced in your feet in the follow through. Almost all players that kind of raise away from it, their waist and their lower body always moves closer to that golf ball, which moves their weight closer to, or more into their toes. So you can kind of see when I end up this way, my hip kind of gets moved closer to the ball, and my weight is very much in my toes on both feet. So you first have to understand that when you finish in that follow through, you should be finishing on the outer heel of your lead foot. You can kind of see my hip is pushed back beyond my heels. If you look closely, the toes of my lead foot are maybe a little bit off the ground. If your weight is going more into your heels, your waist or the lead side of your hip has to actually push and move back around you, kind of more deeper into the heel side. We don't want your hip to kind of stay or to move perfectly straight towards the target. So if I go towards you guys, if you look at my lead side of my hip, when I go through it, the lead side of my hip kind of pushes back so that basically this can get out of the way. My lead leg is straightening out, and you can kind of see where my weight is in my feet. It's outside edge of my lead foot. Okay, so you're kind of pushing your heel back this way, kind of diagonally across the feet. So you should try to finish with the toe of your lead foot maybe just a little bit off the ground. Okay, and you can kind of see the difference of when I raise my body up, my hip goes kind of closer towards the ball, my weight goes more into my toes, and my body has to kind of raise up this way to so that I can kind of counterbalance or maintain my balance in some way. So when I go through it, you can kind of see my weight kind of going more into the heel side, my leg is straightening out, and when my weight is in my heels, if my body stays bent to the trail side, I can counterbalance myself pretty well when it comes to right or left. The next thing is that people have to understand that when you go through the shot, if the upper body is kind of tilted on one side, you're also not supposed to swing it straight. Okay, you don't want the club to go straight down the line. Okay, most people that swing it straight down the line will have to raise that right side up higher in order for the club to keep continuing out to the right too excessively. If you have that understanding that you have to swing it back around yourself on an arc, kind of around this way, that's going to encourage you to kind of turn your hip a bit better. And the more you can keep your body bent to the right, it actually becomes easier to swing more on an arc on the way through. The biggest issue for players that kind of raise away is their understanding of where your weight should finish in your feet. So a great drill is I like to get my players to place a ball just under their toes. Okay, they're just kind of standing on it. You don't have to physically press on top of the ball. You're just placing the ball right under your toes. And the purpose of this is that when you go through the shot, we're not trying to press into the ball per se. We're trying to ensure that your weight stays in the heels, right? So if you prevent yourself from like stepping on the ball, and when the ball's there, it's making it physically very difficult for you to put any weight on your toes. So when you go through it very gently, you go through it like this. If you don't put any pressure on the ball, you're going to force yourself to put your weight more into the outer heel. Okay? So if I just kind of demonstrate that drill. So I'm placing it just under my lead toes. And if I go through it, without really stepping on that ball, you kind of see, right? I kind of have to keep my weight more on the heels. If I'm still moving my weight into the toes, I'll really feel like I'm putting pressure into that ball which you don't want to do. So this is another really great one that you can kind of try out. And I would recommend you do it really slow first. Okay, so if I try this again, when you hold yourself in that finish, I don't put any pressure on the ball. You should be holding your balance. You should feel like maybe your right ear, right shoulder is lower than the left side. But if you're able to hold your balance there and not basically step or put any pressure on that ball that's underneath your foot, that should give you a really good feel as to what you should be doing through impact when it comes to your weight, and to prevent you from kind of raising your upper body up in the follow through. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Now, if you have any questions about anything that I talked about, you can leave a comment down below. I'll try my best to answer your questions as promptly as possible. And if you are wanting to send in your swings to me online, you can visit my profile in the Skillist app. I will also leave a link to that in the description box below.